Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Ridge Community Church podcast. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors on staff at the Ridge, and our vision is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. So as a piece of that, our goal each week is to bring you something that's hopeful and helpful. So subscribe to this podcast to make sure you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Community Church podcast. If you find today's episode hopeful and helpful, then please follow or subscribe, and then rate and review so that more people can find the conversation. In today's episode, we're joined by the Greenfield Worship Pastor at the Ridge, Evan Schwartz, and his wife, Carrie. This is the second half of our conversation. During the first half of the conversation, they shared their story of how they got to the Ridge, how they knew God was calling them to come here. And so if you missed that, you can catch up with our last episode. But in this half of the conversation, they share some of their faith story, why relationships are so important to them, and how they invest in others. This is the second half of my conversation with Evan and Carrie. Just overall curious, it sounds like going into ministry was something that was always like, or had a big place in what you wanted to do growing up, Evan. Why was going into ministry important to you?
So the way I always tell it is that I grew up in the church as a little baby, and my mom was the choir director and my dad was the sound guy. So I think
you only had one path.
Yeah, there was only one way it was going to happen, and that was just following in the footsteps of my parents being involved in the music within a church. I kind of define my relationship with Jesus as, growing up, I knew a lot about Jesus, but it wasn't until high school that I felt like I started to really know the person and character of Jesus and what it was to follow God in your life. And that was right around the exact same time that Carrie and I met. I don't think, actually, when you're a junior at my tiny little high school in East Central Illinois, you have a day where you can go job shadow, and you have a long list where you can choose who you go job shadow, like a location you can go job shadow. And they have a long list of trades or occupations you can go shadow. There's even a chance that you could write in I'd love to go shadow my worship pastor at my church for an entire day. We're friends. That'd be awesome. No, I went and job shadowed a mechanic. That's
my dad was a mechanic, so I connect with that.
Listen, I have to look up a YouTube video to change a light bulb in my vehicle. Okay.
Or outlet covers.
I mean, show me where they are in the store. That's the best I can do. I don't know. The best tools that I have in my toolbox are my cell phone and my credit card. Okay. You do not want me opening the hood of your car. I have no idea why I chose that, but I did it. But I was 16 when I did that, heavily involved in church and music and stuff like that. So that doesn't entirely make sense. Thank you, God, for your faithfulness in my life to show me the right paths for me. But yeah, just being heavily involved in church, doing music in the Christian church calendar, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And there would just be these moments where I was either playing drums or playing guitar or leading worship, where just got this overwhelming sense, and right in a moment where it's there's a chance I might be doing exactly what God wired me to do. And I've gotten that sense in a lot of other things in life since then. I feel like that was the first time I actually had that, acknowledged that feeling in me. I've had that feeling while, doing, producing short films within the church, in parenting and in marriage. There are some parenting feelings that you want to forget. You live to forget them, but there are some that are just redeem all of them in a second, where you just see something amazing happen in your kids, and you're just this is why you do this, why you raise a family together. So those little moments are incredible. I'm sure that there's tons of people that would say, oh, I experienced that same thing, like getting such a great sense of your purpose in life by experiencing something that you did. Like, I'm sure tons of people have stories to that. But as I was kind of experiencing a lot of that stuff within the church, Carrie and I had started dating. She had a great friend in her small friend group that had invited me to hang out with their friend group, which she had never done before. And I thought that was weird. But I took her up on the offer and went out and hung out with friends. That's how we met.
So, Carrie, when he tells you, hey, I want to be a worship pastor, maybe that wasn't the phrasing he used or whatever. Was that something that you were holistically bought in on? Were you like, I love the idea of impacting people for Jesus that way? Or were you like, will we eat? That type of thing?
Yeah. Good question. So I was not like, I was raised in the Catholic Church, so I did not even like really know what a worship pastor was. When we started dating, we were both still in high school. I mostly just wanted a prom date. And
good looking one at that. Came to the wrong guy if that's what you're looking for.
So this was like, winter of my senior year. So I was like, I want a prom date. And then, I'm going off to college, most likely I was not expecting this to be the person I was going to marry type of thing. I had, I had gotten accepted to colleges out of state. I didn't know where I was going to go to college yet. So I just, at the time didn't think too much of it. And then, I went to U of I, University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And so that was really close to home, just 20 minutes from where I grew up. So because of the proximity, we continued dating. Obviously, we really liked each other. And then when I was in college, I got involved in a student organization called InterVarsity. And that's a campus-based Christian organization. And I think I was on the same floor at in our freshman dorm invited me to something that InterVarsity was hosting. And from there, the rest is history. That's kind of where I learned to have a relationship with Jesus for the first time, where I learned like what it meant to follow Jesus and all of that. So, and Evan and I continued dating. He went to a different college. He went to Lincoln Christian University. So he was about an hour away. We just continued dating. And so to answer your question, I think at the beginning, I was kind of indifferent because I'm like, well, I don't really know what that is. And two, it doesn't really affect my life because I'm not, I wasn't expecting to be with him for the rest of my life. And, if that's what you want to do, cool. As I grew in my relationship with Jesus and, knowing that is the path he was planning to take in ministry, I was fully on board for that at that point.
I'm really curious. We're in the middle of this series called Lost Cause, right? Which is we're really diving into and talking about, hey, how do you invest in people who don't know Jesus, that you'd love for them to follow Jesus? And so in your story, like there's that invitation to come to InterVarsity. What made you accept that? Was that something that you're like, I don't really care about following Jesus, but it sounds like there'll be pizza or something like that,
Yeah, probably. That's
college kids gotta eat.
I think for me, it was definitely community. Like going, even though my campus is only 20 minutes away from home, I just remember like that first, like just kind of being homesick and lonely, like those first couple weeks, like trying to find, your place and your people on a huge campus. Like U of I is like 30,000 undergrad students. And even that, I remember that first night in the dorm, and everybody was like going out to parties and bars. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really sound like fun. And I was at that point, I wouldn't have even called myself a Christian, but I just was like, that just doesn't sound very fun to me. Like, and that kind of became the main culture of like my freshman dorm floor of like going out to party and, staying like getting drunk most nights. And I think, that's a lot of people's college stories. But even before I would call myself a Christian, I'm just like, that just doesn't sound enticing to me. It doesn't sound fun. And the times I would go to parties or bars, I was just like, this just is not enjoyable to me. So I think I was just desperately looking for community. And so for somebody to say, hey, we're going to go hang out at this, I think we called it large. I can't remember what we called our main like Thursday night large groups. I think just large, we're going to this thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. And finding community there was exactly what I was looking for. And the way InterVerse, at least our campus chapter had it set up, is they have like a new student retreat in the fall. And so, you go away for a weekend. It might have even been like a 3-day weekend type of thing. And so I went to that, and, it was a lot about being in community, but a lot about learning what it was like to have a relationship with Jesus. I still have this little pamphlet, and I've shown Evan this. So I guess it used to be common to give out tracts. Is that what you call them?
Yeah.
Tracts.
The gospel tract. Yes.
Yes. So,
I think that's what Mark just told us to take to 10 of our neighbors. Is that right?
Yeah. That's I got nothing on that one.
yeah. Well, I mean, I had I didn't grow up in a church that had anything to do with those, so I didn't know what they were. But I still have the one that because we had done other types of like learning about Jesus, but for some reason, it was just this one little booklet. Like when I read it, I'm like, it clicked of like what it meant to like have Jesus as part of your life all the time. And like, so as far as inviting, I think for me at that phase in life is I needed community. I needed to be somewhere where I felt like I belonged. And then, so I was heavily involved in InterVarsity then throughout college, in large group setting, and then eventually leading a Bible study in my apartment, and things like that. And then Evan and I got married when we were both in college, but still somewhat stayed connected and still connected to a lot of my InterVarsity friends. And so we support them financially now, just because I know that had such a huge impact on my life and knowing, the ministry they're doing for other college students.
Yeah. You both have had this kind of concurrent theme of relationships, community, investing in others, being with other people. Why has that been so important to both of you?
Well, it's funny because Evan's definitely an extrovert, and I would call myself an introvert, but I think we both just love, being in fellowship with others. Our kids love it too. Like we try to go to lunch with somebody after church on Sundays, and on Sundays when we can't find anybody available to go to lunch, our kids are kind of let down because I think they've kind of developed the same type of thing of, fun to be around other people, fun to share life with other people. And I think also too, because we've never lived close to family. And I think I've heard from others specifically, like a lot of people around here grew up here, so their family's still here. We've never had that. We lived in Houston, Indianapolis, and now Milwaukee, and we're hours away from our family. So we've always had to create our own family within our church community. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I think we both just thrive on, being in relationships and community with others.
Yeah. So this is the Ridge attending podcast listener cattle call. Love to hit up Sunday lunch. Come on, catch us in the lobby, and we'll go to I don't know. We'll go to Culver's or something. We can do better than that. I bet we can do better than Culver's. But I think
First off, I gotta love that the selling point is by referring to somebody as, cattle. Like that's the that's the real hook. Like I know when I get called cattle, I'm like, I'm hanging out with him.
Not using Midwest phraseology at all.
Right.
Again, with the word phraseology, I'm calling myself to the floor on that one. I don't know what's going on.
It's a horse apiece, right?
Yeah. So I have found that the friend groups that Carrie has really found her spot in is being around people who get her into situations that she wouldn't get into on her own. So in her college friend group, they referred to her as mom. When we got married, I became dad. That was weird, but it still happens. We saw each other for the most part around Christmas, and I was called dad on a few occasions. It's like, guys, you're all older than me. I don't get it, but whatever. So, and that was because, they'd be like, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do that. And it's all this like all in good fun stuff. And Carrie would just be over here saying like, guys, hang on. Let's think about this for a minute. And I think we've brought that same fun dynamic into our marriage.
Oh.
And so it is really great being in opportunities around other people in shared experiences where she's just like, guys, that's my husband. He's fine. Everything's fine. Let me reel him in, and then everything can continue from here. But it's really great being around other people and just hearing other people's stories. I can't find anything else that is more fueling in life than usually sitting around a table with some good food, something good to drink, and just asking the question like, tell me a story. Like, tell me a story from your life. And those are always fascinating. Everybody has unique stories that are amazing to hear. And, when you talk about, again, kind of applying this to lost cause, people that may not have that great sense of community within the church, they probably have some sense of community somewhere. But I think what people so often are looking for is an opportunity to feel valued and to feel heard. And if all we can do in a scenario where you're with someone is give them that feeling that I feel valued because I was heard. Someone wanted to listen to me. Someone wanted to understand some of the things that make me tick. Whether they're awesome or weird or awkward or cool, like the answer is D, all of the above. It's really cool hearing people's stories.
How has that played into this desire to really, fulfill the ultimate call from Jesus, which is how do you help people find Jesus?
Yeah. So what Mark talked about on Sunday of like, who's your one? So podcast listeners can't see Evan's shirt.
Terrible radio right here.
Who's your one? Because our church in Indiana just finished like a year long. What'd you call it? A year, basically the same language of who is your one. So the play on words is Hoosier, Indiana Hoosiers, who's your one?
Who stink, by the way, the Illini.
So
I don't like the Badgers either.
Go Dogs.
Idea of just like contact, when Mark joked on Sunday about like go knock on 10 doors and ask if they know if they died where they'd go. Like before he even got to the end of the sentence, I was shaking my head because that is just horrifying to me. Like the idea of like just walking up to somebody and asking like, do you know Jesus as your Lord and Savior? That just makes me cringe. So we are both all about relationships and, so the idea of, choosing who your one is, it should ideally be somebody, you already are in a friendship with, a relationship with to some extent, or like someone you can easily be in close proximity with, in an ongoing friendship, relationship with. And so, we both had our ones in Indiana, people that we saw on a weekly basis, and just feeding into that. And both of these people, like when we left, when we moved, they made comments about how like they knew there was something different about us, and like, so being a witness through our friendship and actions. So like letting, Jesus who lives within us shine through us in our friendships. And we love having community and friendships with people who are already in the church. But, trying to also find those people who aren't in the church and don't have a relationship with Jesus yet, to like have that be part of our ministry of creating those friendships for that reason.
Well, and there's a difference in defining the church as a location or a building, and rather the church as a people. That when we talk about, when God created the church, he wasn't talking about, a facility or four walls or something like that. He was talking about a people set apart that lived with purpose for the kingdom of God. And so I think in large part, the idea of people wanting to go to church, like that ship has sailed a little bit. There are still people that have curiosity. You see a church building and you want to go check it out. I love that people, have that sense of curiosity and go check things out. But I think we live in a culture where we need to be the church, going to people, going to places where we will find people that want that sense of community, that opportunity to feel valued and heard. And, when you get into intentional relationship with people, it's not for the sake of, getting an opportunity to check a box or add to a number within, a results system within the church or something like that. But it is because we have received a grace from Jesus that we did not deserve. And that is what we want for other people in our lives. We want for people to know the life-giving grace that we've received. So what better can we do than to live out our lives showing people that grace, not saying like, hey, you need to come to church for this relationship to feel validated, but that I want to live life alongside you, allowing God to speak through everyday circumstances rather than me getting to check a box that I brought somebody along with me to church on a bring a friend Sunday or something like that,
Well, we should definitely do Bring a Friend Sunday. That actually sounds like it'd be a great idea. But aside from that, I love that heart where you're not thinking about, and even it sounds so mechanical, right? You're not thinking about, oh, I am sharing my faith with this person for me or for what I'm supposed to do, right? Even if there may be elements of that, it's a heartbeat of, wow, I have this hope for you, and that exists regardless of how you interact with it. That is, I'm going to care and be in relationship with you and invest and be a part of your life, whether or not you ever make a decision to come to church with me or hear my story on why I believe. But I think we would say that when you're doing that and when you are generally caring for them, you're going to have an opportunity to share, hey, this is what God's done in my life. And I really hope he does the same thing in yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Well, that's boom, done. Okay, so I thought of this question, and it's just like as I was writing these questions down, and it kind of really applies because I feel like you guys love the activities. Originally, I wrote this down as say people really talking at a barbecue about your family. Okay, people come over to your house and they visit, right? And they're at the pool and you guys leave and they're like, huh. And they start talking about the Schwartz family. What do you hope they say?
Well, we have a funny story a little bit from our last neighborhood. We moved to our last house in Indiana, like height of COVID 2020. Like no one really wanted to go into anybody's house. No one wanted to have people into their house. And so we started hanging out in people's driveways. And so that first year we were there, it was like almost every week we'd hang out on some neighbors' driveways and hang out. And, sometimes it was just a few people. And sometimes, for bigger events, Memorial Day, 4th of July, it was, dozens of people. And so there was some neighbors that lived like maybe 2 streets down. So they didn't know us as well. But she found out about maybe a year in, it might've been our second summer there. They found out that Evan was a pastor about a year later after we had been hanging out with them for a year. And her reaction to that, I think, speaks volumes. She was just like, I had no idea. You are such a easy person to talk to. I've never felt judged by you. All of those types of things. And then her and her family, they did come and visit our church, I think just once, but we continued to try to reach out to them. I think they're going through something in their family that one of them was out of town a lot, something like that. But, we just hope that they would see us as people who are not going to be quick to judge. But to show love. And, for us, it's showing Jesus's love, whether they realize that at first or not. Anything else to add?
I think people would say, these folks are fun. Their kids are crazy. Mm-hmm. And their home brewery is awesome.
Which we don't have. Yes.
I'm just...
Is that a little... You're just like incepting some ideas for
Here's what I think they'd say in the future.
Okay.
This guy's home brewery is amazing. Like his outdoor home AV setup with that massive TV to watch all the Cubs games where they beat the Brewers is amazing.
We don't have that.
Love this guy.
And boom, you officially lost the Brewers fans. So,
hey, if they made it this far into the podcast, then I'm really grateful that they stuck around that long.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, this has been super fun. And thank you both so much for sharing your story, what you guys been through, your heart. I love your heartbeat. I love how fun you guys are. And just this overwhelming desire. I love the investing in the relationships that something I value highly. And it's really cool to see how highly you guys value it as well. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
John.
us.
Well, that was the second half of my conversation with Evan and Carrie, and I love their heart to really connect with people. They see the value in others, and they see the importance in being connected in community. And as you're listening to this, if that's something that you're interested in, I want to invite you to get plugged in with a group at the Ridge. We even have some summer activity-based groups where you can connect with others over a similar interest. You can find all the details about that in the show notes below. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Podcast. And make sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations.